A hostage situation in Mexico City appears to be a case of mistaken identity, but we'll talk a bit about what's happening there and what the Biden admin is doing about it as it goes forward and as things start to shake out about this. In other news, another train derailment by Norfolk Southern in Ohio rocks the region, and now we have to sit back and wonder, why is this happening so often, what the safety features are, and again, why this never happened, number one, under Trump, and number two, why nothing was changed about it after Trump was out of office. So we'll go over some of that and what that means and what's happening there. 23 are arrested facing domestic terrorism charges after arrests in Atlanta at the police training compound. So we'll talk about what's happening with that and some of what's happening there. And Bloomberg comes out with an article telling us that the Supreme Court has no business weighing in on student loan debt because it has gone up over 3,000% since they were all in college. It is going to be all this and more. I was the one flying the balloons. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Contemporary. My name is Jay Edgar, and this is your evening news. And we've got a bunch of stuff to go over here today. A bunch of stuff that got crammed in over the weekend, including yet another train derailment. Surprise, surprise. And wouldn't you know it, it's in the same state and it's the same company. And, we can all throw our tinfoil hats on and talk about how this is the most horrible thing in the world. But, we do have to look at the pragmatics of this. And my big question there, again, is, number one, if this is all Trump's fault, why did this not happen under his presidency? And number two, the big question is there something going on in Ohio? So we'll be talking a bit about that. Plus, breaking news story out of Mexico. In fact, the Norfolk Southern train derailment would have been the top story had not it been for what happened in Mexico over the last few hours. So we'll be talking about that. We've got a lot of stuff to go over here today. Plus, I have the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat last week right here, even coming up to Monday, because we didn't do a live chat segment at all last week. But we are officially moving this to Monday now. So at the end of the program, about 7:45, no matter where we are on the list of stuff to do, we're going to stop what we're doing and we're going to go over some of the live chat here today. And we'll be talking a bit about it, and I'll be responding to it intermittently throughout the show. But do keep in mind, we've got a lot to do, so we got to stay on task if we want to get anything done. And it's going to be all this and more over here on Contemporary. Before we get started, make sure you guys go check out great programming such as The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, who will be returning at some point at the beginning of next month. I actually had about an hour conversation with him last night while I was driving home from my parents. So we had a nice long conversation, talked a bit about what his plans are, how his move went, and what he's been doing for work. And you guys, you're going to have to go over there and check out his podcast to get the skinny on all of what that he's been doing. I can't do it justice. I definitely can't. But he's got a lot to say, and quite frankly, I think that's going to be the vast majority of his first podcast back, is going back and telling you guys what he has done. And it's an impressive feat, too, by the way. So go check that out. Also check out Tweets by Brit, Mr. Behavior, the No Gimmicks Podcast, and more, as we bring you a more comprehensive news experience and culture experience from the common man for the common man. That is right. For too long, we have got all of our news and our culture from people who wear suits that cost more than our houses. No more! Instead, go back and check out great programming from people who have had to make some of the same decisions that you have, including, by the way, questioning whether it's better to move your stuff all the way down the eastern seaboard, or whether you should just throw all your stuff away and sell it and buy new stuff when you get to your new destination. was another conversation that was had last night. It was good to catch up with Primo, so go check him out, go check out the rest of those. And we are going to get into the main news of the day. Tell some friends again, because we are going to be doing live chat, and yeah, some of it might get spicy. Because we're trying to keep the AM radio aesthetic of things, we're not going to get too spicy while we're here, but we'll check out some of what you guys have to say over here on Contemporary. Let's get started. We're going to start, as we always do, with the finance. It's always a good little chance, because I know not everybody is a big fan of the finance segment, but it gives everybody a chance to go tick off the live stream and go tell your friends to come in here and try to embarrass the host. How are we doing in volume? It seems a little bit loud in my ear, but I think I turned everything up to play New Vegas. Let's watch the monitor here. No, we're good. All right, let's get started. Starting with the Dow. The Dow is at 33,431.44, spending the entire day up. But at one point, just barely. I think it actually might have tipped below the previous close. Yes, it did, very briefly. 2 points below the previous close, just before it closed today. And then bouncing back up to end its day at 33,431.44. That is up 40.47 points, or 0.12%. So a few things that are happening with there, and some concerns about what the rally will do now that we have Fed meeting minutes coming out as well. Looking at the Bitcoin, which is at 22,407.10. That is down on the day 23 US dollars, or about 0.1%. And that is after spending a large amount of the day up as well. It jumped up and then dropped below, and then jumping up to above its previous close before dropping back below and struggling to get just back up to where it was. Bringing us back out so we can see what happened over the weekend. We do see the big drop off from Friday before staying steady in a relative fashion throughout the weekend and throughout the rest of the week. So that is where your Bitcoin is at. Not really going up, down, moving much of anywhere, but still something to look into if that's something you're interested in. I know not all of my audience is interested in Bitcoin because of the holding and the molding and the selling, but that's where we have that. Looking at the gas prices around the Madison area are steady from Friday, but lo and behold, our gas prices around here did catch up over the weekend. Gas prices, I had said, had stayed steady at $3.19 where I live, but after Madison jumped up from $3.06 to $3.20 at the majority of the stations, now we are starting to see some of that coming out of here. The BP exiting the Isthmus is the high price in Madison right now at $3.26. Everybody else is staying steady between $3.16 and $3.20, so something to watch for. And I know that I'm sure a lot of you went out and topped off, hopefully before it jumped, but I did not get to be that lucky. But that's where we're at for that. Let's grab one from IBD. Got a couple different finance ones here. A couple ones for what's happening with the numbers, and one for layoffs, because we have another bit of layoffs news. From Investors Business Daily, Dow Futures will Powell testimony threaten stock market rally. Apple and Tesla in focus from Scott Latonin. Dow Futures will little changed ahead of Tuesday's open after the Dow Industrial cut gains to just 40 points on Monday. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's testimony is due on Tuesday. Apple jumped on an analyst buy rating, while Tesla shares skidded after the company's additional rounds of price cuts. Fed Chief Powell is set to begin 2 days of congressional testimony Tuesday, where he'll have the chance to explain the central bank's planned response to a more resilient economy. Last month, the Fed raised the rates by a 0.25 percentage point, and investors will be looking for clues for the amount of the hike at this month's March 21st to 22nd meeting. By the way, I noticed that Ron Helton always talks about 100% gas. Does that mean you're using premium? Because that's what 100% gas is here. It's premium, which means that you're actually doing well on gas, because most everything else runs on unleaded with regular unleaded with ethanol mixed in. In fact, I think premium around here is the only time you can get 100% gas. So that's my first question here is that what we're talking about here? Ooh, we could go to dogehype.com. Are you ready for that? Should we do that? Go to dogehype.com, buy followers, buy primes, buy subs, chatbots? Yeah, no. Grassroots only around here. And tell some friends though. Currently, traders place 69% chance of a quarter percentage point rate hike at the next meeting, according to CME's FedWatch tool. Wow, my FedWatch tool is completely different, and usually targets around Owen Benjamin and Nick Fuentes. Then Friday will feature the Labor Department's February employment report. Non-farm payrolls are expected to come in at 215,000 in February, down from January's 517,000 growth per Econo-Day estimates. I still don't understand where we're getting all these jobs with everybody laying off, unless of course it is the laid off employees being able to come back out and catch a fast food job or a bank teller job or something to get them by while they try to get back into the learning of the coding and things like that. Guidewire reported a mixed fiscal Q2 result late Monday. Shares climbed 1% in extended trade. The stock is building from a bottoming base with a 78.76 buy point. More key earnings on report this week include BJ's, CrowdStrike, Dick's Sporting Goods, JD.com, MongoDB, Thor Industries, and Ulta Beauty. On Monday, the Dow and the S&P both gained 0.1% apiece. The tech-heavy NASDAQ reversed down 0.1% after giving up solid gains. EV giant Tesla traded down 2% on Monday. Among the Dow stocks, Apple rose 1.85%, and Microsoft climbed 0.6% in today's stock market action. Would that be more of learn to do Coke? IBD leaderboard stock Alteryx, Arista Networks, Palo Alto, and Salesforce, as well as Dow Jones Stock, American Express, and JP Morgan Chase are among the top stocks to buy and watch amid the recent stock market strength. Alteryx is an IBD leaderboard stock, and Salesforce was featured in this week's Stock Nearby Zone column. On the futures, ahead of Tuesday, Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ were little change versus fair value. Give it time, because the futures just opened. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. The 10-year yield rebounded on Monday, settling at 3.98%, so just shy of 4. It apparently dropped over the weekend. Oil prices reversed from early losses to rise around 1%, and West Texas Intermediate futures traded above $80 a barrel, which is where your gas prices are coming from, by the way. WTI futures traded around recent highs, so that is where we are at. On the markets, I want to gloss just briefly over what CNN has to say about the situation with the Fed minutes. More rate hikes are needed, says Fed's Mary Daly. So this is not coming from Jerome Powell, but this is coming from somebody who is high up in the Federal Reserve, from Nicole Goodkind. Federal Reserve policymakers will need to raise interest rates higher and keep them there longer to tackle the higher prices caused by a sticky inflation, San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly said on Saturday. It is clear there's more work to do, Daly said in a speech at Princeton. In order to put the episode of high inflation behind us, further policy tightening maintained for a longer time will be likely necessary. Daly acknowledged that high inflation and the aggressive policy action taken by the Fed to bring down have caused panic on Main Street and Wall Street. The responses range from fearing those actions will tip the economy into a recession to fearing that they won't be enough to get the job done, she said. That fear has led to volatile market swings upon each release of new economic data, as uncertainty leads investors to look for answers in the immediate, said Daly. But achieving our mandated goals takes time and broader view. The Fed's current tightening regimen, she said, was and remains appropriate, given the magnitude and persistence of elevated inflation readings that are still in a ridiculously high level. But they're not as high as they used to be, but they're compounding on what they used to be. So that is what we see coming from that. Let's look at our layoffs, and then we will talk about Mexico. Our layoffs of the day come from SiriusXM. Are you serious? I am. SiriusXM announces layoffs, joining growing list of tech companies cutting jobs. From Amanda Perez Pintado. The satellite radio company SiriusXM plans to cut 475 jobs, or 8% of its workforce, as a broader restructuring effort due to new business investments and economic uncertainty, according to a Monday SEC filing. The layoffs will impact nearly every department and follow a November review to identify areas where the company could improve agility and efficiency, CEO Jennifer Witz said in an email to employees sent on Monday morning. Which said SiriusXM, which owns Pandora. Oh, I didn't know that. I like Pandora. Had already reduced content and marketing spend, decreased its real estate footprint, and tightened restrictions in its travel and entertainment policy to curtail costs. However, today's decision to reduce our workforce was required in order for us to maintain a sustainably profitable company, which said. Sirius joins a growing wave of sweeping layoffs across the tech industry in recent months. Tech giants Meta and Amazon notably announced cuts that would impact thousands of workers after the pandemic hiring boom. Impacted SiriusXM employees will receive a severance package, transitional health insurance benefits, employee advocacy program continuation, and outplacement services, which said. SiriusXM makes most of its revenue from subscriptions, but it anticipates it could lose subscribers in 2023 due to economic conditions and soft car sales, according to a February earnings release. That is an interesting way to look at the situation coming down here. Now, I look at myself, because realistically, when I'm sitting here, even though I don't really have a lot of payment processors out there anymore, because of my spat with PayPal and also my spat with Buy Me a Coffee, but I do have the tin cup out. I definitely do, and I do try to push people over to the Twitch side, because you can use your Amazon Prime subscription to support me, and I hope that you do. It is free to you if you have an Amazon Prime subscription, but even if you don't want to just use that one there is the subscription model there, and there are 2 tiers. I don't have anything set up for emotes for tier 3. I have some stuff in mind, but I don't have anything set up over there. But yeah, if you want the spicier emotes, just go up onto that level 2. You will have to pay that one out of pocket, unfortunately. But regardless, when we look over at the Twitch side, that is my big point of the tin cup. But even I understand that when times get hard, your arts are the first things to go. And I look at things like OnlyFans and True Models and the Patreon surge, which I think is going to hurt, and these girls who are trying to make careers out of True Models, OnlyFans, and Patreon. And I always remind them, they think that it's recession-proof. It's not. As SiriusXM is pointing out, when things started getting hard for me, when I was still living in redacted, I had SiriusXM on my truck, and I was paying for it for a couple of years, but just when it started getting harder and harder for me going back and forth to work, especially when gas started to rise again, before it started to come back down, that was the first thing gone, was my SiriusXM. I had an iPod. In fact, I still have it. It's over here. I think the battery's shot in it. Whoops. And it just got dropped on my desk. But I have the iPod here. And that has thousands of hours of music in it. All of it totally legitimate, I promise. Every second of the music in here is totally legitimate, I promise. But that's got thousands of hours of music in it, plus podcasts and everything else. And, I can turn the Sirius off and just use that. Or, now that that's not working, I usually Bluetooth either YouTube or Spotify from my phone into my truck. I don't see the point of paying for Sirius. I really don't. There's no entertainment on there that I actually enjoy. I mean, it was kind of fun to use when I first bought this truck, because every time you buy a vehicle that has a Sirius subscription from a dealership, they throw in like 3 months for free. And it was fun to use for those first 90 days, but just, I can't see. And what is it up to now? I don't even know. Let's find out. Price. Packages, plans, and price. Yeah, Music Showcase, just the regular Sirius, is $12.99 a month. You get 3 months for $1, and that's the low price one. But I mean, you can go up, and you can get the platinum for 3 months for $1 if you go. I think you have to sign a year contract with it too, for $23 a month. I can do better stuff with $23 a month. Now, I say this knowing the fact full well that I have Netflix, Paramount Plus, and then I pipe onto my sister's Disney, plus I've got the Amazon Prime. I say these things knowing full well that I have all of these services and use them in lieu of having cable. But it is just a touch different because there isn't, everything that I want to sit and watch at night on YouTube. So there's that aspect to it as well. But yeah, for especially as little as I drive now, like legitimately, I am a mile from work. I think it's 3 in total when you, because when I say a mile from work, it's as the crow flies straight across. But I do have to go back up and take a fairly significant right angle up there. I think it is, by the time it's all said and done, I think it's 3 miles. Driving. One way every day. It takes longer to set up the Bluetooth because, especially with a new device that the truck doesn't recognize, sometimes you got to try a couple times. It takes longer to set up the Bluetooth and get that on and streaming in my truck than it does for me to drive to work. And I'm not even joking. When it's cold and there's an inch of frost on the windshield, it takes longer to warm the truck up to get the windshield cleared off than it takes me to go to work. Why the hell would I buy Sirius? Although, to be fair, since I've been here, I've been back and forth to my parents' house, which is... The map says it's supposed to be an hour and a half. It usually takes me about an hour. But in that time, I get my clank on. I listen to Styx a lot of the time. Sometimes I hate listening to Tim Pool. Or maybe I'll hate listening to Shapiro or something. Or just throw some Spotify music on for that trip. There is legitimately no reason for anybody to pay for Sirius. Unless you really, really like Howard Stern. So all that they're getting is the 3-month subscriptions that the dealers are buying for each vehicle. And with vehicle sales down, where's Sirius revenue coming from? I'm surprised it took them this long. All right, that is enough of me ranting about Sirius XM. Let's get into the main news of the day. Yeah. Yeah, Quest Fanning pointing out, yeah, I pay like $14.99 a month for YouTube Premium, mostly for the ability to store on my phone when I'm on internet contact with the subway, but it includes YouTube Music for free. Nice app. Yeah, that's another thing out there that is usually probably a way more functional application, if that's something you're into. I don't pay for YouTube Premium, but I don't have the same issues that Quest does for storing it on there and having to go underground a lot of the time in the tunnel. For the most part, even when I'm driving a distance, I'm always in service, so it's just a matter of throw on the Spotify or the YouTube and go. But that's what they have coming for that. All right, let's talk about what's happening in Mexico. From CNN, 4 U.S. citizens were kidnapped by gunmen in Mexico in a case of mistaken identity, U.S. official says. From Rosa Flores, Josh Campbell, Paul P. Murphy, Polo Sandoval, and Rebecca Rios. That's a lot of people to write one article. So, and this is, by the way, very close to, if this is what they're saying, this is very close to the Donna facility, I believe. 4 U.S. citizens were assaulted and kidnapped by gunmen in northeastern Mexico. In a case of mistaken identity, a U.S. official with knowledge of the investigation told CNN. The Americans are believed to have been targeted by mistake and were not the intended victims. The official said investigators believe the Mexican cartel likely mistook them for Haitian drug smugglers. Why? Were they black? That's not me being racist, that's a legitimate question. Adding, investigators have not identified any concerning criminal history on the part of the Americans. The Americans had traveled to the border city of Matamoros for medical procedures, the official said. Which blows my mind because you've got wait lines in Mexico for medical procedures, unless you're going for black market stuff. Under the table, pay for cash and don't ask a lot of questions kind of stuff. Citing the receipts found in the vehicle. Yeah, don't get a receipt if you're doing something under the table. Mexican President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador offered a similar explanation. The information we have is that they crossed the border to buy medicines in Mexico, and there was a confrontation between groups. I'm not passing judgment here, but something here doesn't pass the smell test. They went to Mexico to buy medication and got attacked by a cartel. You kind of see where I'm going for this? There was a confrontation between groups and they were detained. The whole government is working on it. The incident highlights the ongoing violence in some Mexican cities, which have been racked by organized crime, at least since the Mexican drug war began in 2006. Well, there's that and the fact that cartels like this operate in places like this in Nuevo Leon and Tamaulipas for getting people across the border. As well as the growing business of what's known as medical tourism. The missing Americans who were not identified drove to Matamoros on Friday in a white minivan with North Carolina plates, the FBI in San Antonio said. There, they were fired upon by unidentified gunmen and were placed in a vehicle and taken away from the scene by armed men. An innocent Mexican citizen was killed in the encounter, U.S. Ambassador to Mexico Ken Salazar said. We have no higher priority than the safety of our citizens, Salazar said. This is the most fundamental role of the U.S. government. Officials from various U.S. law enforcement agencies are working with Mexican authorities at all levels of the government to achieve a safe return for our compatriots. So, it looks like, I think at this point, everything is like the BBC is saying, and we'll look at that for just a second, that we're still on the hunt for them. But it is looking like everybody is identified and possibly picked up by U.S. authorities at this point. So I'm actually going to gloss over this one. But yeah, I mean, U.S. hunts missing Americans after Mexico kidnapping. The CNN article was updated 1 hour ago. This was updated 3 hours ago. So it is possible at this point that this is all, for the most part, resolved. We'll look for updates for this tomorrow. And with that, we move on to the title card of this one here, coming from our friends over at NPR, telling us that another Norfolk Southern train derails in Ohio. This is from Emily Olson. And remember, hit that donate button. NPR had to donate or lay off 10% of its staff. So your taxpayer subsidies are not doing enough for them. Hit that donate button. They need our money, comrade. It's not your money, it's our money. Because NPR is never printing reality, National Progressive Radio. Let's see what they have to say. A Norfolk Southern train derailed Saturday evening in Springfield, Ohio, sending 28 cars sliding diagonally across the tracks, but injuring no one, thankfully, according to several state and local agencies. The crash marks the rail's second major derailment in just over a month and comes amid lingering questions about environmental and public health in nearby East Palestine, where a train carrying toxic chemicals derailed on February 3rd. Officials stressed that the 212-car train that derailed this weekend was not carrying toxic material and does not pose a threat to the community. You know, other than the fact that trains from this company keep flying off the damn tracks in this state, I would say that that's a threat to the community. Both the Clark County Emergency Management Agency and the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency examined the site and deemed it safe. There is no risk to the public, Norfolk Southern spokesperson Connor Spielmaker said on Twitter. Again, while there is no environmental threat to this, you know, we're not going to have to sit off and burn off a bunch of chemicals. There are houses that are built pretty close to tracks, and, you know, again, when we look at a situation like this, thankfully, and even in East Palestine, Ohio. Thankfully, and the places that they did derail, that they did go off the tracks, that was not the case. But there are some houses that are pretty close to the tracks that, you know, if something did go flying off like this, I mean, I've seen it where I live. If something did go flying off the tracks at 155 miles an hour, as some of them go, then you're gonna tear up a lot of real estate and possibly take somebody out of their house. Let's just say for a second, and again, with this being in town and close to the station, this usually wasn't the case down in Kenosha, but let's just say the Amtrak in Kenosha. You know what? You know what would be a better example of that? The Amtrak that's going from Kenosha to Milwaukee. Because there are some spaces through Racine County that it's booking, and where it's booking, it's going through residential areas. If that Amtrak goes off the track, not only is everybody in the Amtrak train screwed, but there are 7 different places between Kenosha and Milwaukee where that thing going off the tracks at the speed that it's going is going to take out somebody's house. So that's what we have for that. We're looking at clean air, clean soil, and clean water, said Clark County Health Commissioner Charles Patterson in a Sunday press conference. There have been multiple sweeps by multiple teams. The train was traveling just outside Springfield city limits en route to Birmingham, Alabama, when 28 cars jumped the tracks around 4:55 p.m., according to Craig Barner, Norfolk Southern General Manager for the Northern Region. Local authorities imposed a precautionary shelter-in-place order for residents within 1,000 feet of the derailment, which impacted 4 or 5 residential homes, said Springfield Fire Chief Dave Nagel. The order was lifted 10 hours later. Initial assessments of the scene were slowed by downed power lines, Nagel said, which left 1,500 residents without power. Gee, it's March in the north. Now, I understand that it's probably not 38 degrees in Springfield, Ohio, like it is here. But man, I would think that down power lines would be a problem, an environmental problem. These morons. State Route 41 remained closed as of Monday morning, its asphalt cracked by the incident. Wow! Hey, you know what? I would call that environmental danger. Yeah, no, we're not burning off toxic chemicals here, but you've still impacted a local community and taken out their way of life, at least temporarily. 4 nearly empty tankers were among derailed cars carrying residual levels of diesel exhaust fluid, pig pee, and a polyacrylamide water solution, said Springfield Hazmat Coordinator Matt Smith. The Ohio Emergency Management Agency described the materials as common industrial products shipped via railroad. Well, so is vinyl chloride. Fire Chief Nagel said crews found dried liquid in the outside of the tanker, but assumed it was sludge that splashed up from the derailment itself. His team detected no leaks on the tankers. Well, yeah, I mean, if you throw a bunch of pig urine on the ground, it's not going to do anything. And as far as polyacrylamide, I don't believe that is toxic either. I'd have to go back through my MSDS to see for sure, but... One hopper containing non-toxic PVC pellets did spill its contents onto a nearby soil, but it doesn't pose a health risk. No, you've just got perlite now in your soil. You've made potting soil. You'll get some aeration in your garden. EPA Director Ann Vogel said her team would remain on site for cleanup. Well, I have questions. Again, I have major questions about this. I am glad that nobody was hurt. But again, I am in full understanding of the fact that somebody could have been hurt. Not just the environmental side, not just not being able to breathe in your house. Thank God that we don't have to go through that. But when you look at carnage like that, enough to push rail cars that far off the track, you're going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour. And one of those jumps and goes further off than that and takes out somebody's Suburban. That's somebody that's not making it to Christmas next year. Let's grab one from CNN. Norfolk Southern announces new safety measures after East Palestine disaster as NTSB probes another Ohio train derailment. From Norin Salahia, Halian, Lauren Lai, and Artemis Moshtagian. As federal investigators visit the site of another Norfolk Southern train derailment in Ohio, the company vowed new safety measures in response to its toxic train wreck that ravaged the town of East Palestine. Norfolk Southern will revamp its hot bearing detector network as part of a new 6-point safety plan the company announced on Monday. Again, why are we not seeing this already? Hot bearing or hot box detectors use infrared sensors to record temperatures of railroad bearings as trains pass by. If they sense an overheated bearing, the detectors trigger an alarm which notifies the train crew that they should stop and inspect the rail car for a potential failure. And again, this was something that was supposed to be in place for the first derailment, and yet we have silence. And these things they're supposed to be close enough together that you detect a bearing when it starts going bad, not 4 days later when it's in flames and taking rail cars off the tracks. That's how it's supposed to work, anyway. How it works in practice, I can't tell you. After the February 3rd toxic derailment in East Palestine, investigators discovered hot bearing sensors detected a wheel bearing heating up miles before it eventually failed, but didn't alert the train's crew until it was too late, according to a February 23rd preliminary report by the National Transportation Safety Board. Again, I remind you, bearings don't just go bad. It's not just that they heat up and 20 minutes later they fall off the train. This was going bad and probably throwing heat readings for days before this went off the tracks. Which at some point tells me that there was a deliberate ignorance to what was happening. Currently, the average distance between detectors on the Norfolk Southern network is 13.9 miles. On Monday, the company announced it would examine every area where the distance between detectors is greater than 15 miles and would develop a plan to deploy additional detectors where needed. All that's telling me is that that thing went over probably 30 to 50 of these detectors between the time that that bearing started heating up and when it went off the tracks. The wheel was legitimately on fire. On camera that we got security footage of from what they reported 20 miles before it went off the tracks. I hate government, I really do. Norfolk said other new safety measures would include working with manufacturers of multi-scan hot bearing detectors, which are able to scan a greater cross-section of the railcar's bearings and wheels to accelerate development and testing. Adding 13 acoustic bearing detectors that analyze the acoustic signature of vibration inside the axle and would be able to identify potential problems that a visual inspection could not. These detectors would be added to high-traffic routes in Norfolk Southern's core network, which is probably not a bad thing because you can hear a bad bearing. Collaborating with Georgia Tech to advance safety inspection technology using machine vision and algorithms powered by artificial intelligence to identify defects and needed repairs, because that'll end well. accelerating the installation of new inspection technology, including the use of high-resolution cameras stationed in strategic locations on its premier corridor, which is the train line that connects the Northeast and Midwest and runs through East Palestine. So, I don't know if there's any word as to what caused the derailment, the second one on Springfield, but I'm willing to bet it's probably going to be a bearing again. From 10 CBS WBNS, I'm actually going to skip over this because this is the same as the 6-point plan we just looked at, so let's get rid of this one. On the financial side of this, Norfolk Southern to provide financing for temporary relocation during soil cleanup. After we were told up and down that no, the soil and the air is safe. Come on back home. From Rachel Frazen over at The Hill. Norfolk Southern will pay for temporary relocation for people who live within a mile of the site of a train derailment that spilled hazardous chemicals amid ongoing cleanup efforts. The EPA said Sunday in an update that the company will provide additional financial assistance that may include temporary lodging, travel, food, clothing, and other necessities. That's the least of what you can do. It's a good start, though I'm not detracting from the fact that they're doing this. But I could definitely say that a few people are probably going to need a little bit more. There are people that are probably going to need house remodels to get all the crap out of their walls. On Norfolk Southern's dime. Or the government's dime, depending on who actually was at fault for this. NTSB. The update comes as some residents close to the derailment site may notice additional odors. While work is being done on the soil there, the EPA also said the payment is coming at its request. Local organizers said that they were glad to hear about the assistance, but that more needs to be done. This helps our short-term problem, but we will need longer-term relocation options, independent environmental testing, ongoing health monitoring, and safe disposal of the toxic waste. Daniel Winston, co-executive director of the local group River Valley Organizing, said in a written statement. Asked about the latest update, the company spokesperson said it was working on removing tracks and excavating the soil underneath. Okay, when are you going to be digging up people's yards to do the same? The company said it's using additional air monitors and will continue to monitor the area water as well. Now, you don't need fancy sensors to monitor the water. Apparently, all you need to do is throw a rock at it and watch the pretty colors. From WKBN 27. Norfolk Southern payout plan for Pennsylvania counties. From Patty Collar. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro announced Monday that Norfolk Southern will pay communities in Pennsylvania impacted by the East Palestine train derailment, and it's just a starting point. Following a meeting with Norfolk Southern CEO Alan Shaw, in which Shapiro said he demanded the rail company cover the entirety of the costs incurred by the Commonwealth, local agencies, and local fire departments that responded to the derailment, Shaw agreed to set up a $1 million community relief fund for businesses and residents in Beaver and Lawrence counties who lost revenue as a result of the incident. That number is going to need to go up a little bit. At the governor's request, Norfolk Southern agreed to pay the Commonwealth to recoup losses due to train derailment and cover costs that may accrue over time with continued testing and monitoring. The money is broken down in the following manner. $5 million to reimburse local fire departments in western Pennsylvania that need to replace contaminated or damaged equipment that was used in responding to the derailment. $1 million for community relief fund to be run by Beaver and Lawrence County officials to support business owners and residents impacted by the derailment. $950,000 to cover Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection's work in western Pennsylvania. $400,000 for the Pennsylvania Department of Health Services, including costs associated with Health Resource Center, which has already served more than 250 residents since opening February 28th, like rent, supplies, and staff time. You're still going to need more than that, by the way. Costs associated with the Department of Health's Poison Control call line, which has tracked every call related to the derailment, and $30,000 to cover the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency's staff time since the Commonwealth Response Coordination Team became active. I think that's on the low end still. I think it's going to wind up costing well more than that. I think a bristle came off of my toothbrush. And Mayor Pete, the last one that we'll talk about on this. Mayor Pete is triggered by claims that he only went to East Palestine because Trump did. Well, you can be triggered all you want. It doesn't change the fact that you didn't go until the day after Trump went and showed your ass up. From Virginia Kruta. Mayor Pete appeared to be triggered by claims that he only visited the site of the toxic derailment in East Palestine because former President Trump did it first. Buttplug spoke at length on a number of topics with CNN senior reporter Edward Isaac Dover, but the topic still drawing the most oxygen is the East Palestine derailment. And while the former mayor conceded a few mistakes, he argued that most of critics were not being fair to him. Okay, if you are a grown man and your argument is it's not fair, you should not be in the workforce, especially in a government job. Especially in a secretarial government job, by the way. You're a cabinet member, act like it. Admitting that he probably should have gone to the site of the derailment, which was followed by a massive crash, a toxic chemical spill, and a failed attempt at a controlled burn much earlier than he did. Mayor Pete bristled at the idea that he was somehow goaded into making an appearance only after Trump showed up, with trucks filled with clean drinking water and other supplies. That's bullshit, Buttplug said. We were already going to go. Mayor Pete called Trump's visit somewhat maddening to see someone who did a lot to try to gut not just rail safety regulations because my orange man bad, but the EPA, which is the number one thing standing between that community and a total loss of accountability for Norfolk Southern, and then show up giving out bottled water and a campaign swag. Mayor Pete also responded to criticisms aimed at his footwear, calling those complaints maddening as well. Well, I'm actually going to go on a limb and say that you probably didn't need to go that direction on the footwear. Yes, it was ridiculous to go out there in something like that, in dress shoes, but this is somebody who's never been at an industrial site. And yes, while he is dressed up with the safety goggles and the hard hat and the reflective vest like the poster boy for OSHA, indicating that he might know what the OSHA regulations are, your footwear is a weak line of attack on something like that. Especially when he did so much else wrong. Alright, so that's what we have going on with Ohio. Let's move on to Georgia. So I've got a couple videos of what's happening over there. Billy Heath III of Fox 5. Construction site burns. Huge plumes of smoke and massive police response after a Defend Atlanta forest. Hashtag Stop Cop City protesters face off with police at the site of Atlanta's future public safety training facility. Billy is told that Molotov cocktails were thrown, construction equipment is on fire now, and this is on a key road southeast. Police are moving quickly to various areas across the expansive site. Now, I will give our friends to the left a little bit of deference to this because we have got an actual criticism off this. We've got camera crews that are just sitting here filming the fire, and yet I don't see a single protester at site. Now, with an arrest record there, I can say that there's probably evidence that there was some sort of, protester presence. But as far as I can see where they can get their conspiracy theories from. That this was staged as a photo op for cops, because we don't see any fire equipment. All we see is some Georgia State Patrol cars moving around and people taking pictures. So that is what they say for that. Is there audio that went with this, by the way? Or is it just the tractor burning? I talked over the autoplay for almost the entire autoplay. But as of this video being thrown around, I see no protesters anywhere. But apparently they were somewhere, because they had the cuffs thrown on them. Marjorie Taylor Greene also weighing in on this. Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeting out, put this back to the beginning, Antifa attacked that there Atlanta Future Public Safety Training Facility. This is domestic terrorism. It was planned for weeks and announced on social media, which is also, by the way, another indicator that there probably was a problem with this and there were protesters there to be arrested and this wasn't a psyop. And I am all for a good government psyop, by the way. Antifa are self-proclaimed communists and consistently organized to attack our government over and over again. They should be taken seriously and not tolerated anymore. With a video from Officer Lou, which I think is actually the same video we just watched. Yes, this is the same video we just watched. But this also comes complete with commentary of people saying, "Oh, well, I didn't see anything." Edsel Robbins says that the FBI sure is on top of this. Free the January 6th Patriots now. And a bunch of people saying that, well, Antifa just means that they're against fascism. Hey, my grandpa fought in World War II. He was Antifa too. No, he wasn't. All right, let's talk a bit about this. From Fox 5. 23 charged in clash between protesters and police at future Atlanta Public Safety Training Center site. From Fox 5 Atlanta Digital Team and Kim Leffler. Police have charged 23 people with domestic terrorism after a violent clash between police and protesters at the site of Atlanta's future public safety training facility nicknamed Cop City by critics. Sunday night, police say the DeKalb County construction site was on lockdown as crews worked to put up flames around the area. In total, the Atlanta Police Department said 35 agitators have been detained. It is unknown what charges they will possibly face. Officials say around 5:30 p.m. Sunday, dozens of protesters left the nearby South River Music Festival, changed into black clothing, and entered the site of the controversial proposed police training center. I wonder, and I don't know how long the South River Music Festival has been planned, but I do wonder if that was put out there to be a cover for this. Or at least a rallying point to something that had already been pre-planned. This was a very violent attack that occurred, and this evening, very, very violent attack. Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum said near the scene. A video released by Atlanta Police shows what appears to be fireworks aimed at officers. In the same video, you can see items including rocks and Molotovs being thrown by protesters in the direction of police cars, a tipped-over vehicle that later became engulfed in flames, and protesters attempting to set other pieces of construction equipment on fire. Shearbaum called the incident a coordinated criminal attack against officers. Well, let's get rid of the headlines here, and this appears to be from the City of Atlanta Police Department. So I want to see if we can see the rocks and the fireworks. I don't know if this will be a different video than what we watched before. Well, it is, but that's because this one's 22 minutes. So we'll skip around a little bit in this. Oh, yeah. There are the protesters. Do we have volume for this? Or is this just security cam footage? While this plays, I'm going to take a second and jump up and grab my water bottle over there. So we'll say goodbye to the Instagram audience, and then I will go over there and grab that. Yeah, we can see. I mean, there is a lot of Blacklock in here, but looks like they may have recruited some other people to come through from the music festival that weren't necessarily prepared to jump into Blacklock and be Antifa. But I also find it interesting, especially with this video being available, that this was not shown. You know, when I understand the tractor engulfed in flames is for dramatic effect, but this would be, especially if you're trying to show your case, like the leftoid said on both the videos that we looked at before. I see a surprisingly few amount of protesters out there. Look at this old guy out there, wearing a red MAGA style hat too, with this Blacklock on. I mean, if I was a politician and trying to make a point about Antifa, this is the video that I'd be showing, not... Hold on. Not this. Or this. Because, I mean, what do you get out of here? Just the aftermath. From CNN, with a little bit of an update on what they're facing at this point. 23 face domestic terrorism charges after arrests in Cop City protests at planned police training site in Atlanta. From Rebecca Reese, Dakin Andone, and Nick Valencia. At least 23 people faced domestic terrorism charges after they were arrested on Sunday amid violent protests at the site of a planned law enforcement training facility in Atlanta dubbed Cop City, by opponents who claim it would propagate militarized policing and harm the environment. Some 35 people were detained on Sunday, and 2 of those arrested are from Georgia, while the rest hail from states from Maine to Arizona, because of course they do. and one each is from Canada and France, according to the list provided Monday by the Atlanta Police Department, which said the Georgia Bureau of Investigation is the prosecutor. Orange flames rose from a construction tractor, and at least 4 other fires burned in and around the fenced site as people in black swarmed on both sides of the barricade before the squad cars and armed officers arrived, surveillance videos released by the Atlanta Police Department show. The scrap came at the start of what protesters are calling a week-long mass mobilization, with Thursday labeled as a National Day of Action Against Police Terror at the forested site slated to host the $90 million 85-acre law enforcement facility. Officers weeks ago fatally shot a protester at a construction zone, and activists there previously had been charged with domestic terrorism. A group of violent agitators used as a cover of a peaceful protest of the proposed Atlanta Public Safety Training Center to conduct a coordinated attack on construction equipment and police officers, police said, a characterization some participants have disputed. The group changed into black clothing, went into the construction area, and threw large rocks, bricks, Molotovs, and fireworks at police officers, destroying construction equipment by fire and vandalism, the police department said in a statement. The illegal action of the agitators could have resulted in bodily harm. Appropriate charges are being coordinated with DeKalb County prosecutors and Georgia AG's office, Atlanta Police Chief Darren Shearbaum said on Sunday in a news conference, adding no officers were hurt and some detained were not from Atlanta. From the sounds of it, most of them were not from Atlanta, which again makes me question what the coordination is. And they tell me that these are non-coordinated groups and they just organically crop up. But I mean, we've got people coming all the way over from France to do this. And rarely, if ever, do we actually see people from that particular community when we see something like this. It's a little bit unsettling, actually. Officers exercised restraint and used non-lethal enforcement to conduct arrests, the police statement added. Activist Kamal Franklin, however, called the arrest indiscriminate and said law enforcement response further demonstrates policies of police aggression and the tactical response of over-policing. You guys were shooting fireworks at them. I mean, at some point it probably would have been better off for you to shoot guns at them, because then at least you'd have had a definitive judgment. Opponents of the training site have said they fear police will be taught there how to quash social justice movements. Language being used by police calling those arrested outside agitators is meant to separate protesters and meant to criminalize and detach a movement from its homegrown origins, said Franklin, director of community movement builders, part of the coalition of activists protesting at the site. Most who attended were from in and around Atlanta, he claimed to CNN. See, and that's a contrast to what we saw in Fox 5, because Fox 5 is saying that the majority of them were not from Atlanta. So, that is where we're at with that. Fox News reports who is attacking the planned police training center in Atlanta, dubbed Cop City, and why. From Emma Colton. Vandals in Atlanta hurled bricks and Molotovs at police officers and set cars on fire Sunday in protest of an 85-acre training complex for the city's police and fire departments. You know what really pisses me off about this the most? There are people out there that are praising the vandals in Atlanta, knowing full well that they're coming from places as far away as Canada and France, from Maine out to Arizona and dozens of places in between. But these are the same people who said that Rittenhouse is automatically in the wrong because he crossed state lines. It's the latest in a series of attacks against the facility, which has been dubbed Cop City by its detractors. The planned $90 million complex has been in the ire of environmentalists and anti-police activists since 2021, when the Atlanta City Council approved the complex in June of that year. The facility is primarily being funded by donations to the nonprofit Atlanta Police Foundation and will include an amphitheater, classrooms, and training area for police to carry out simulated crime situations, such as shootouts, the New York Post reported. A coalition of left-wing activists soon moved into the woods after the decision was announced, according to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, in a bid to prevent the construction. Other left-wing activists, such as Antifa members, criminal justice reform activists, and other environmentalists, have also become involved in the protests, the New York Times, a former newspaper, reported last week. Protests at Cop City hit a fever pitch back in January, when a state trooper shot and killed an environmental activist named Manuel Esteban Pais Terran, who reportedly went by the name Tortuguita and identified as NB. Terran was shot after allegedly refusing demands from authorities and firing a gun at state troopers. A Georgia State Patrol trooper who was wearing a bulletproof vest was also shot in the abdomen and left injured. Brian Kemp declared a state of emergency over the violence that month, authorizing up to 1,000 members of the Georgia National Guard to be called upon for any other potential incidences of violence. The order remained in effect until February 9th. At least 19 people have been arrested and charged with domestic terrorism since December to March 5th in connection to protests and riots against the project, including 6 who were arrested during a riot in Atlanta. The planned project was galvanized an environmentalists and anti-police protesters to stand together against the project. Anti-cop protesters say the police tactics learned at the facility will not lead to a decrease in crime and have slammed the project as one that promotes the militarization of the police department. Or maybe they just want a place for them to train that's far away, removed from everybody else. To be clear, Cop City is not just a controversial training center, it's a war base, where police will learn military-like maneuvers to kill black people and control our bodies and movements. Kwame Olufemi, the Community Movement Builders, a group that advocates for police forces to be defunded and eventually abolished, states on the site of Stop Cop City. Well, to be fair, people like that think that a simple parking ticket is a maneuver to kill black people. So, I mean, this is not exactly an objective situation here. I tend to agree with the concept of over-policing. I think it's well overdone, and again, my biggest stance to this is that there are too many laws. I don't have as much of a problem with police as my libertarian friends, because if the government is tasked with making the laws, then they should be tasked with the enforcement, including paying for it. But with that being said, there are too many goddamn laws. There are too many ways for the government to come and collect money from you or put you in a box if they don't like you. And that's where our reform needs to be. Because if we got rid of about 90% of the laws in this country, we could probably get rid of about 95% of the cops to go with it, especially the federal ones. Get rid of those guys, jackasses. But do you know who was arrested among them? SPLC law attorney charged with terrorism in the Atlanta riot from Luke Rosiak. An attorney with the far-left nonprofit SPLC was arrested Sunday for allegedly committing domestic terrorism to stop police facility from being built. Are you shocked? An attorney with the Atlanta Police Department said Sunday that Thomas Webb Jurgens was among the 23 people charged after a group of violent agitators used the cover of a peaceful protest of the proposed Atlanta Public Safety Training Center to conduct a coordinated attack on construction equipment and police officers. They changed into black clothing and entered the construction area and began to throw large rocks, bricks, Molotovs, and fireworks at police officers. According to the State Bar of Georgia, Thomas Webb Jurgens is an attorney for the SPLC who was admitted at the bar in 2021. He's one of the only 2 of the 23 alleged agitators who were actually from Georgia, according to the police. See, and that's where we start to get mixed messaging here. Fox 5 says majority of them were from out of state. CNN says majority of them were from Atlanta proper. And Daily Wire says that the majority, or only 2 of them, were from Georgia. Which means the rest of them cruise state lines. We're gonna cruise! I'm gonna cruise! Oh my god! I cruised state lines yesterday twice. 4 times actually. Because in and out of Minnesota and then in and out of Minnesota again. I'm gonna cruise. Oh my god, I'm gonna cruise! It's the end of the world. On LinkedIn, Jurgen says he is a staff attorney for the SPLC's Economic Justice Program. A former assistant public defender in Orlando and a graduate of the University of Georgia Public Records reviewed by the Daily Wire, matching the name and birthday provided by the Atlanta police match up with a job history on LinkedIn showing the study of law at the University of Georgia and past residency in Orlando. SPLC's website says its economic justice initiative seeks to reform the criminal justice system, stopping the use of offender-funded services such as private probation companies, and working to reform bail systems that discriminate against the poor, and to stamp out abusive practices by bail bond companies. The SPLC did not return a request for comment. Jurgen's cell phone was turned off. Interesting that this is one of the people that was picked up for this. And in a situation like this, you gotta be not surprised by something like this, which we carried over from last week. From the Daily Mail, Atlanta's wealthiest suburb, Buckhead, inches closer to seceding from crime-ridden city and could be up for a vote as soon as today. This was 5 days ago. Which actually surprises me a little bit because typically a suburb is already detached from the city. It's, I guess I don't know how it works in the South. Those of you who live in the South could tell me if possibly there's something different about that, but like, I live in the greater La Crosse area. I'm not going to tell you what suburb I actually live in, but I live in the greater La Crosse area. Just like you guys knew that I lived in the greater Janesville area, but I'm not going to tell you which suburb I was in down there either. So I'm not going to tell you which one, but like, I'm so new to here, I can't think of even the names right now. But like, to go across the river, La Crescent, well, that's a different situation altogether because that's a different state entirely. But like, Holman is a suburb of La Crosse, and that is its own municipality, its own. Onalaska is a suburb of La Crosse, and mind you, there is pretty much, they touch, they connect, there's no countryside between them, but that is its own municipality. That is not a part of La Crosse at all. Period. They have their own police force, they have their own public works, they've got their own sewer, they've got their own plow trucks. That is a completely separate municipality altogether. But reading from Sophie Mann for DailyMail.com, the possibility of a secession from the city of Atlanta became a little more likely this week as the affluent area of Buckhead continued its attempt to peel off from the crime-ridden inner city. 2 bills that would allow Buckhead to secede from passed a Republican-led Georgia Senate committee Monday and could be up for a floor vote as soon as today. If both chambers of the legislature approve the bills, and they are subsequently signed by Brian Kemp, residents of Buckhead, the 24 square mile area on the edge of Atlanta, would be able to vote in the November 2024 election about whether to leave Atlanta and form their own city. The move faced initial opposition last year when former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan put the kibosh on the effort, sending the secession bill to a committee comprised solely of urban Democrats who opposed the effort. But the state's new Lieutenant Governor, Burt Jones, is a backer of the measure. The effort is still expected to face resistance in the House. Now, again, my question here, and my big question here, is this a neighborhood in Atlanta, or is this an actual separate, complete municipality? Is this actually a suburb? because there is a difference there too. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Not going into townships, but like examples in places that I know of and that I've been to. Like they say, Tribeca and Soho in New York. That's a good example I can think of off the top of my head. Where they're actually, it's a New York City address, and that's separate from the boroughs, because the boroughs have their own independent governance outside of the, well, semi-dependent on the New York City government. But like Soho is not its own city. Tribeca is not its own city. They're neighborhoods. Which I have to wonder now if this Buckhead is a neighborhood of Atlanta that's trying to create its own municipality. But if it is officially a suburb, then it's its own municipality already. No, they say it's got its own zip code. Buckhead is one of the most expensive zip codes in the U.S., with mansions lining the streets and glossy shopping centers downtown. According to Fortune, a spokesperson for the Atlanta mayor, Andre Dickens, said the City Hall will continue to work with the Senate to put an end to this legislation before it has disastrous consequences. In 2021, Bill White, the CEO of Buckhead City, pushed for the suburb to divorce itself from Atlanta. We're living in a war zone in Buckhead, shootings and killings. It just never ends, he told Bloomberg. I doubt that if you're in a mansion line area. I'm sorry, I highly doubt that you're seeing shootings and killings. And I also, if you become your own municipality, I don't think that's going to stop. White, who officially filed to secede from the city in June of 2021, previously slammed Atlanta city leadership, including Keisha Lance Bottoms, accusing her of ignoring soaring crime in Buckhead and presiding over a demoralized and underfunded police department. White hopes the suburb, where the average home costs $1.4 million, will be able to secede in order to take public safety into their own hands. Again, if it's got its own zip code, it's already a municipality. I don't understand where the problem is here. Again, this might work differently in the South, but, here, if it's got its own zip code, it's its own city. But that's what we have for that. Alright, let's talk student loans. We are running up on the clock here right now, and I did make the promise, even though there's only a handful of you guys watching here, and looks like everybody stopped chatting after Quest Fanning popped out of here, but I made the promises at 7:45. We were going to stop what we're doing and do live chat, so let's finish up what we can here. Insider says, even if the Supreme Court finds Biden's student loan forgiveness was an overreach of its authority, it doesn't mean the relief will get struck down. Here's why. From Eilert Sheffy. Supreme Court justices might not like President Biden's student loan forgiveness, and they might not even think that he has the authority to carry it out. But none of that matters if the court finds that a major legal condition doesn't exist. Standing in, which a plaintiff must provide concrete injury caused by the policy they're challenging. When the Supreme Court took on the two cases that paused Biden's plan to cancel up to $20,000 in student debt for federal borrowers on Tuesday, all justices scrutinized whether the plaintiffs in both cases had the grounds to sue Biden's plan in the first place. The first case court heard was brought by 6 Republican states who argued that debt relief would hurt their state's tax revenue and the revenue of student loan company Mohila. The second case was brought on behalf of 2 student loan borrowers who did not qualify for the full $20,000 amount of relief. Both cases brought up the issue with Biden's authority to use the HEROES Act of 2003 to cancel student debt, which gives the Education Secretary the ability to waive or modify student loan balances in connection with a national emergency. Like the Pinko Pox, they argued the president was demonstrating executive overreach, using that law and say it's not what Congress intended. While the justices questioned all of the topics, they spent the bulk of the time drilling into the issue of standing. Article 3, standing, is something all plaintiffs must prove, that they would be injured by the policy, that the injury can be directly traced back to the defendant, and that the relief they're seeking would address those injuries. Well, to be fair, putting a stop to the student loan forgiveness would address those injuries. Abby Shafroth, director of the Student Loan Borrower Assistance Project at the National Consumer Law Center, explained to Insider that the Supreme Court must find the cases have standing first above all else. If there are 5 votes finding that neither of the parties bringing these lawsuits have standing, then the court doesn't have the authority to decide the issue of whether the action was legal here, Shafroth said. That would be a finding that is not within the court's power to decide. Technically she's right, but that's a stretch. So as Shafroth said, it could be entirely possible that the Supreme Court ends up issuing an opinion that says they think Biden acted without proper authorization of Congress, but that justices will recognize our own limits on authority by dismissing the case for lack of Article 3 standing, which, by the way, was what happened with the election honk honk. And it looks like both conservative and liberal justices aren't sold on whether that condition exists in the case. That's going to be a stretch again, no matter what. So, if they're taking up the case, then obviously somebody thinks that there's at least standing. Because I think it only takes 4 to have it thrown out, if I remember correctly. From Axios, debt relief, limbo, leaves borrowers on edge over financial future. From Aaron Doherty. Americans who had expected sizable chunks of their student debt wiped out under President Biden's student debt relief plan are now recalculating what their futures may look like. Borrowers who would be eligible for relief through Biden's plan won't know for at least a few months whether as much as $20,000 of their student debt will be forgiven or still owed as the Supreme Court decides on its constitutionality. I feel a bit anxious because depending on which way the pendulum swings, it could mean being able to pay off my debt in 5 years or maybe being able to pay it off in 10. Ryan Rudolph, a Pell Grant recipient and a Duke Master's student based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, told Axios. He added that he's saving as much as possible so he can weather the storm if the plan gets struck down. Borrowers who would qualify for relief say the plan would give them leeway to make big financial moves that they've been putting off, like buying a house or starting a family. Shanna Hayes, who's currently unemployed and based in Alexandria, said that if Biden's plan went through, she likely could co-own a home with her wife in the coming years. The first home they bought, which has since been sold, was only in Hayes' wife's name because her student loan balance, she said. Virginia must have different marital property laws. Trust me, I've gone through the real estate laws in this state. I never got the license, but I've listened to enough that I have an idea on what the laws are, and I don't believe that flies in this state. The court's conservative justices seemed deeply skeptical of the plan during oral arguments last week. We're kind of expecting the worst to happen, and kind of hoping for the best in terms of what we can potentially come out of that decision, said Hayes. Well, I mean, you shouldn't be depending on any of this anyway. The government does not have your best interest at heart. They never have. Of course, here comes the electioneering. Supreme Court student debt could affect millions of swing state voters. They better find it constitutional, otherwise evil Republicans might not win. From NBC. Dante Shinny, contributing. The Supreme Court heard arguments last week about the Biden admin's plan to provide student debt relief and called into question survival of a proposal that has far-reaching impacts. The executive action, which the admin announced in August before the 2022 fall election, in part to fire up younger voters, could offer debt relief to tens of millions of people in the U.S. and cost more than $400 billion. But judging by last week's court session, there's a real possibility the justices will strike down the proposal this year when they offer their opinion. And if that happens, what did I tell you when they first announced this? There was a plan in place. If that happens, there are going to be a lot of unhappy voters in 2024, and some of them in important battleground states. What did I tell you was going to happen? What did I say was going to happen? Biden is looking at this, or whoever's pulling Biden's string is looking at this and saying, we can make the big promise that is completely unconstitutional, and then when it gets struck down in the courts, we can make our entire campaign evil Trump justices. I guarantee you that's what's coming. Over the past few decades, student debt has exploded as a problem for many who go to college, in large part because the college costs keep rising, which is, of course, because the colleges know that the government will pay the bill. They'll get the money. Whether or not the services get the money, they'll get their money. So just keep tacking on another zero. We've got a tweet here from the law section of Ron Helton's favorite publication from his favorite politician. Bloomberg Law tweets out, the 9 Supreme Court justices who will rule on President Biden's student loan forgiveness plan went to college when it cost a fraction of what it does today. Let's read from Bloomberg. Student debt grew 2,807% since Supreme Court justices graduated. College grads in 1970 had an average of 1,070 in loans. Today, that number is over 31,000. Again, that goes back to what I just said. If the colleges know the government's going to pay the bills, they're not out anything if somebody falls behind on the student loans. Again, it's the servicers. Either the ones within the government or like your Sally Mays or people like that out there. When the government or when the institution, it's the same thing with hospitals. Because the government will pay the bills and subsidize those too. Through the ACA, and everybody has to have the insurance through the ACA. They can go back and charge whatever they want, and the insurance companies will pay and then come back and saddle you with the difference. But the hospitals will get their money no matter what. If you outlawed insurance tomorrow, which would be March 7th, then by May 1st, you would be able to pay for a hospital visit with the change out of your pocket. In most cases. Why? Because they need butts in beds. You outlawed student loans tomorrow, which would still be about the middle of the spring 2023 semester. I don't think they'd get their act together by fall, but by fall 2023. But by fall semester 2024, you'd be able to pay for college with a part-time job again, because they operate on butts in seats. Plain and simple. But on the other side of it, a major student loan lender just asked the federal court to end the payment pause and return borrowers not eligible for Biden's broad relief back into repayment at minimum. Coming from Insider's Eilert Sheffy. A major student loan lender wants the payment pause to end. On Friday, SoFi and SoFi Lending Corporation, a student loan refinancing company, filed a complaint in the District Court for the District of Columbia against the U.S. Education Department, asking for President Biden's latest extension of the student loan payment pause to be invalidated and set aside. As an alternative, require borrowers ineligible for Biden's broad student debt relief to re-enter repayment at the minimum. After Biden announced up to $20,000 in student loan forgiveness for federal borrowers at the end of August, 2 conservative-backed lawsuits paused the implementation of the plan. In light of the legal challenges, Biden extended the student loan payment pause through 60 days. After June 30th, or 60 days after the Supreme Court issues a decision on the legality of the relief, whichever happens first. But I promise that'll get extended again, unless SoFi wins. SoFi claimed in its complaint, which Bloomberg Law first reported, that the latest extension of the repayment pause was unlawful on multiple grounds. Well, to be fair, so were the rest of them. The HEROES Act provides limited authority to relieve transitory burdens for federal student borrowers who are temporarily unable to make payments on their loans due to active military service or national emergencies. But the 8th extension applies to all federal borrowers in the country, not just those suffering hardships as a result of current phase of the pandemic, the complaint stated. And the 8th extension is also structured to address litigation uncertainty, not to return borrowers to the financial position that they would have occupied absent the current phase of the pandemic, it added. Similarly to one of the lawsuits that paused Biden's broad debt relief, SoFi claimed that the Education Department did not follow the proper procedure through the Administrative Procedures Act notice and comment period to extend the payment pause, to which the public has an opportunity to comment on a rule the government enacts. The Biden admins has said on numerous occasions that the HEROES Act exempts it from that procedure. Well, if it did, that's the only law in history that does, by the way. Because you have a right constitutionally to redress your grievances with the government. And yes, that includes if you are an institution, if you're a bank. SoFi also detailed how it has been harmed by the additional payment pause extension. It wrote in the legal filing that since 2012 it has refinanced over $30 billion of student loans for 450,000 borrowers. And it said that it competes with, oh Jesus Christ, AVG is getting uninstalled, or I'm going to find something else that doesn't do pop-ups. I said it competes with the federal government for federal student loan borrowers by offering them private financing under more favorable terms. The loan moratorium has directly harmed SoFi's federal loan refinancing business, it wrote, because of the moratorium, suspended payments and interest for federal student loans, and because privately refinanced loans are ineligible for programs and policies applicable to federal student loans. Yep, and I know that too, by the way. The moratorium has eliminated the primary benefits of student loan refinancing in essence. SoFi is being forced to compete with loans with 0% interest rates, and for which any ongoing repayment of the principal is entirely optional. The bank said it has lost about $300 to $400 million in total revenues as a direct result of the moratorium. And by the way, if they all get forgiven, it's going to be even worse. Like I said, that money is not just going to disappear. But if it does, we're going to see large swaths of the economy like this get put under, putting more people out of jobs. And I know that a lot of people don't want to sit here and think about the fact of, oh my god, why are you simping for the evil student loan companies? Well, because I want there to be a financial sector when we're all done. Alright, we are out of time. It is 7:47. I promised at 7:45 we would switch over to live chat, so it did stay a little bit slow throughout the night here. Again, we kind of dropped off after Quest Fanning took off for the night, which was lame. But that doesn't mean that we don't get to sit back and read this, because our Monday night reward for you guys coming in and chatting is me reading some of your live chat. But we will look back at last week. So I have, for all 5 days, on the notebook here, of the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat, and we'll go over them. But from here going forward, Monday will be exempt from this list because, well, we'll be reading it on Monday night. So, our Monday chatters last week were Beam Me Up, Mr. Scott, Ron Helton, Luke Wee, Arbolt. On Tuesday, our chatters were Ron Helton, Spartan, 0000, Sardacar, who just popped in today. Welcome. No, you are the last person who should rule with any authority. I like you, Spartan. I do, but I don't think I would vote for you for dog catcher. Maybe you could have a position in my cabinet when I have absolute authority as shitposter advisor. Wednesday was Ron Helton and Luke Wee. Wednesday was a slow night. Thursday was our busy night last week. Thursday, we had Beam Me Up, Mr. Scott, Ron Helton, Rant. The RRC popped back in. He is coming back. come next week, or not next week, in about 4 weeks, on his birthday, April 1st. 80s Kid and Luke Wee. And Friday, our top chatters were Ron Helton, Grant Spartan, and Luke Wee. Let's look at what you guys are doing today. Ron Helton is here, says, good evening, J. Edgar and fellow Edheads. Welcome. Tell a friend. Quest Fanning is here, which I haven't seen him that much on this end of the schedule. I wish I could go back to morning show. If I could write my own schedule at work, I would go back to a mid-shift. Let's see. Ron Helton says, hey, Quest, sorry my router is rebooting. If you can't hold it or mold it, then sell it. I think it was you should have already sold it, because then it rhymes. And we had the conversation about 100% gas, which I guess in the South, you can get all of your octane levels at 100% gas. Up here, you can only get non-ethanol gas as premium. So that's why I was confused. Yeah, Ron Helton says 100% gas has zero ethanol. I understand that. But our gas stations only offer that in one grade, not all grades. You should drive down to Oklahoma and just try out 100% gas and see how it goes. But I have flex fuel, so I actually run better on a little bit of ethanol, and I can run on E85 as well, although I get crap gas mileage when I do. Horrified Teardrop says, hi, I want to offer... No. Let's do this in the voice that Horrified Teardrop is. I want to offer promotion of your channel. Viewers, followers, views, chatbots like me. The price is lower than any competitor. The quality is guaranteed to be the best. Auto on, incredibly flexible and convenient. Order management panel. Everything is in your hands. Turn it on, off, customize. Go to dogehype.com. We got botted. Yeah, Ron says it's 87 octane. I bought 91 on Sunday. It was $3.49. Also 100% gas, no ethanol. Learn to coke, says Ron Helton. No, we don't do this. This is a family show. Quest Fanning says, wasn't Howard Stern supposed to be the killer app for Sirius XM? Yeah, well, he went mainstream. I loved Howard Stern in the 90s. That was a great program. But he got to the point where he was famous and liked his money better and decided that he needed to toe the line. Ron says, wow, that's expensive for Sirius. Blows my mind that people pay to listen to the radio. Well, and I know that there's one aspect of this, and this comes from me having used Sirius before. Like, the only commercials that are on Sirius are internal commercials. Like, hey, try this other channel. You might like this because you're listening to this channel. That kind of thing. Or, hey, we're giving up an Eagles channel that we're introducing. It's a temporary channel. Go listen to that for the weekend if you like the Eagles because you're listening to the classic rock station. That kind of stuff. And people will pay money. And I don't understand it because I won't. I can't put myself in that mindset. I'm not saying that mindset is wrong. I'm just saying I can't put myself in that mindset. Like John from the Porch Boys has told me that he will pay extra on everything to eliminate ads. He hates ads so much. He pays for Spotify Premium so he doesn't have to hear ads. I can't do it. There's better stuff I can spend my money on, and I have been poor. Quest Fanning says, I pay like $14.99 a month for YouTube Premium, mostly for the ability to store on my phone when I'm out of internet contact on the subway, but includes YouTube Music free. Nice app. See, that's a different service too, and you're actually paying for an additional service. But like, for what I do on YouTube when I'm traveling, number one, I have an ad blocker on my phone, so that does cover up some of what we see there. I don't see ads on my phone. I do get them on my tablet because I haven't figured out how to integrate. It's for whatever reason, though it's the same OS, it doesn't integrate as well on tablets as it does on the phone. But I've also got the ad blocker on the computer, which works when it wants to. But it does zap the YouTube ads. But yeah, like if I was getting a different service, like being able to store to the phone, I could see myself paying for YouTube Premium if it was something that I was going to use. But just to not hear an ad, I can't give them $14.99 a month. Ron Helton says, Stern is a dick, always has been a dick. You couldn't pay me to listen to that jerk. I liked it back in the day, but man, I can't stand him. I tried to listen to him when I had Sirius. I'm like, this isn't even shocking anymore. Quest says, Sirius may also be the backbone service for in-room or in a hotel or something. They have a bunch of content. Yeah, actually, that is one of the things too. So my cousin runs the campground. Again, I'm not going to tell you which one, for obvious reasons, for his protection. In case I say something wrong and Jared Holt finally gets it and I take off and, then I have to be protested. I want my family left out of everything. Well, my cousin runs that campground, and one of the things that he did while he was running the campground, the little one, he's got mostly jukebox and live music at the new one that he's at now, but at the little one, before there was jukebox, when it was just like a 12-seat bar that was mostly a hallway, he did the Sirius XM commercial package, which took care of the royalties for having it in it. Like, you as a consumer can't go out and buy Sirius XM, like for your truck, and then run it on a radio and play it in a bar. You'd be in violation of several licensing laws and would probably either get a massive fine and get your account revoked or go to jail. There are licensing laws, and I hate the laws myself, but if you want to do business, it's just like when people ask me when I say I want to start a distillery, it's like, oh, that's just for water, right? Wink. I'm like, no, I'm actually going to go get my distilling license. I hate the fact that I have to get a license to make liquor, but if I want to make profit off of it, I have to play their game, their way. That's the same thing with Sirius. Like, they cover the royalties and everything. So yeah, I see where Quest is coming from with that. Ron Helton says, were the kidnapped Americans DEA agents? Maybe. There's more to that story than we're being told. It just seems so suspicious to me. Ron says, how did they know so quickly they were Americans that were kidnapped? Ron Helton says, mistaken for Haitians, so they were black, which I will read out on air because I said the same thing. Although mine was a question, and I tried to appease the YouTube gods by saying, okay, I'm not trying to be racist when I say it like this. Quest Fanning says, I rarely get mistaken for a Haitian drug smuggler. Now a leprechaun, different story. Ron says, my bet is they were DEA. Quest says, couldn't it have been a private clinic? Medical tourism is a big business. It is, but also with the lowered regulations and the fact, again, that you can go and throw stuff under the table down there. Luke Wee says, I'm a little behind catching up, but yeah, I don't use XM in my vehicle when I can listen to YouTube for free. I'm not paying Howard Stern's rent. Quest Panic took off, says I gotta catch an episode of Blue Bloods with the girls, and I'll catch you in the chat 9 p.m. for today's Porch Boys. Are they on today? I didn't even look. Because they don't go every week anymore. I don't think they're doing an episode tonight, dude. I think they're just throwing memes up in their Discord. Quest says, I do think that before 4G and 5G coverage became broader, there were good stretches of highway out of cell range after Sirius was a good... at that time, yeah, Sirius was probably a good bet. Ron says, the city wants to stop the... what was it? Buckhead? The Buckhead City, because it's losing tax revenue. As far as zip codes go, cities can have multiple for the same city. Yeah, well, okay. Because La Crosse proper has 2 zip codes, but they're both written as La Crosse. Kenosha has 5, and they're all written as Kenosha, but Summers has its own zip code, and Pleasant Prairie has its own zip code, and Bristol has its own zip code. And they're all independent cities, municipalities. Bel Air, Texas is surrounded by the city of Houston, has its own municipal government. Yep. Spartan says, I should rule this entire planet with absolute authority. No, you should not. Thanks for putting me after Biden. Well, Biden will be dead soon. So I have no problem putting him in power of something because I know it's not going to last. As far as I know, I think I'm older than you, Spartan, which means that you'll probably outlive me. And I don't want to live under your absolute authority. How are the chickens? They're in the country with another family member. Still laying. Spartan says, I've ruled the world with far greater compared to Earth, with beings far more powerful. Humans are frogs, and I am hot pot capitalism with freedom and justice for all. Interesting. I just want to be left alone and make liquor. Ron says, my old Suburban needs 100% gas. It doesn't like ethanol. Which is surprising because most of the multi-ports like that don't seem to mind ethanol as far as I've driven. The TBI, I could see where you're coming from with that because that was miserable when it came to ethanol. And a lot of times I would use premium on the TBI vehicles that I had. Even though it was more expensive, it just seemed to work better with the throttle body carburetor. Spartan says, Howard Stern is funny, but he's an evil degenerate. That's why I liked him. I'm an evil degenerate too. Prison for him, 10 years, one with labor, he can be a dishwasher. I think it'd be a good fate for him for selling out. And Ron Helton will get last word tonight. Says, instead of paying for premium radio, seems it would be cheaper to buy the songs you like one time in digital services. Yep. That's what I did here. And with that, we're out of here. Let's finish this off. Throw some outro music up. Where's my outro music? Did I close my outro music inadvertently? I think I did. Yeah, I was using Windows Media Player for something else earlier. I was trying to find a video of my nephew for his birthday on the external. I couldn't find it, but I was using Windows Media Player for that. Because most of those videos from when he was like a year old were recorded in old Windows Media Player format. Where's my outro music? There it is. That down a little bit. All right. And then also get rid of the competing music. Yeah, we totally have this together here. All right, so we'll be back here tomorrow with more news, more headlines, and more contemporary. We'll catch up hopefully on some of the stuff that we missed today. Like I said, there was a lot, and I did get a little bit of a late start. Make sure that we got the live chat out of here. We'll be back here tomorrow night with Twitter trending and everything else that has happened in the next 22 hours. Looking forward to that. Looking forward to seeing what we have going on there. Looking at some of the Dutch protests and the Ukraine as well. Plus, because we didn't get to it today, we'll probably have an extended story or extended segment of government officials behaving badly. One of my favorite segments on the show. So, come back and join me for that. We will be back here for more. And until tomorrow, stick around. We'll go find someone on the Twitch side to go raid. And we will see you then. And until then, I am Jay Edgar. And this is Contemporary. Take care.